I want people to feel me more than they remember a thing that I said or I did. And I can't do that if I don't have boundaries around the parts of me that are super important for my healing, for my energy management.
Hello, stereotype breakers, and welcome to yet another episode of the Meaningful Conversations podcast. Today's guest, her light is contagious, and I can't wait for you to listen to my conversation with Naketa about creating boundaries, allowing yourself to be selfish, and what is selfish in a healthy way, and all things allowing yourself to be kind to yourself, self-care, etc. Before we jump in, I want to tell you more about Naketa, about my guest today, who is the number one balance and relationship advisor in the world for ultra high net worth power couples and fast scaling married women entrepreneurs striving to create deeper connection with themselves and their forever lovers so that they can live fully. Formerly trained as a licensed clinical social worker, Naketa architected her core professional skill set as a psychotherapist, trauma specialist, sexology, and relationship expert with strategically infused tenets of coaching to set a new bar and create ripples inside the personal development industry. She's also the international best-selling author of the book Selfish: Permission to Pause, Live, Laugh, and Laugh Your Way to Joy. I'm obsessed with this book. I've had it for 3 days, and my Kindle is saying that I'm at 85% of completion. So I'm probably going to be done with it by the end of the day because it's just so powerful, so beautiful. And, without a further ado, let's just jump into my conversation with Naketa so that you can see for yourself the kind of level of wisdom and light this woman brings into the world. Hi, Naketa. How are you doing?
I am magical. How are you, Masha?
I'm doing great, and I'm so excited for this conversation because, like I already told you behind the scenes, I am just devouring your book, and your story is phenomenal. And how you're sharing your gifts with the world is just wonderful. And I can't wait to hear your answers to my questions.
Yes, bring it.
So, your book is called Selfish,
Mhm.
right? And you're all about the notion of intentional selfishness. People have a bad connotation with the word selfish, and in fact in my native language it's used as an insult a lot. I remember as a child my mom called me selfish and I was like, oh no,
Mhm.
no, she's swearing at me.
Yeah.
However, being selfish can also be healthy, and you show it very well. So how would you reframe being selfish for those who are listening from an unhealthy selfish to a healthy selfish?
Yeah, that's a powerful question. So when I first saw and heard, I'm very visual, and when I knew it was time for me to write my survivor's memoir, my personal transformation story, which took me 8.5 years to be transparent enough with myself and do enough of that polishing work to even complete it, by the way. So I just want to dig that in there. But I saw the name of the book before I wrote or spoke a word because I did a lot of the writing speaking into a microphone. And when I first felt it and saw it in my spirit, I had a visceral reaction very similar to probably how you were when your mother called you selfish when you were a kid. I was like, what? I'm not selfish. I'm the most selfless person. All the things. But of course, my nerd hat kicked in the gear and I went deep diving in all the languages to see where did the word even come from? How did it get in our lexicon? All the things. So I did the history. And depending on whether you're looking at the Greek or the Hebrew translation, somewhere in the 1600s, it's debatable between 1634 and 1693, a bishop, a Pentecostal bishop, is the one who got the word into our lexicon as we know it now, where you're egotistical and you're not thinking about anyone but yourself and all the negative connotations. Well, where it came from, which really helps a lot of humans, but especially women, understand it even more so to break free of the old definition. Originally, it was because the parishioners were going to the bishop, as you did in the 1600s, to ask permission for anything that you wanted to do, even in your personal life, especially if you needed clarity. The women wanted to not have to say yes to their husbands every single time the husbands wanted to engage in sex. And the bishop said, and translation's a little finicky, but basically, if you do not have sex with your husband outside of pushing a child out of your vagina or when your menses is on, you are being selfish because you belong to him. You are his property, right? So that word gets into our lexicon, our dictionary as we know it, and we've been berating beating and dimming each other with this word that was set up to keep us bound as chattel for however many hundreds of years at this point, right? So when I found that out, it was, hands off, let's go. What? I'm redefining it some kind of way. And I'm a very spiritual person. So I had to pray and, make sure that I wasn't coming from my ego with the way that I wanted to reframe it. So the way that I felt led to redefine the word is as a personal, intimate gift to create your joy. When you are being intentionally selfish, you now have the space to do the personal transformation work, the forgiveness work that you need to do with yourself. I'm not talking about other people. That's kind of understood for most people, is to not let them own you emotionally by harboring anger, but that's only half of it. We'll forgive the ex, the cousin, the sister, the pedophile. We'll forgive them, but we don't forgive ourselves because we blame ourselves for quote unquote allowing certain things to happen, even when we were kids and we had no ability to fight anything. But we haven't completed the forgiveness work, which is why we're so emotionally taxed and bound by a lot of those past things we thought we moved on from. We see that ex we thought we forgave, and all of a sudden we have a visceral reaction and we get tense and we get tight, we get angry, we get scared. It's because we didn't complete the work. A lot of times as ambitious women, you don't complete that kind of work because you don't have time for it. You're just like, I don't have space for that. I got work to do, bills to pay, kids' hair to braid, whatever is in your world. And we will put more and more, I don't want to say busy, more and more productive work, more projects on our lap to keep ourselves from being with us, like to be with ourselves, right? So we don't want to get in our head. We don't want to think. We don't want to go into the subconscious parts of us and see where those early narratives and scripts were tethering us to those 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old stories that we didn't make up. Other people gave them to us. Other people called us stupid. Other people said we weren't good enough, weren't smart enough, weren't fast enough, too skinny, too fat, too light, too dark, whatever it was. They put those narratives on us, even if they didn't say it directly to us, but they said it around us, or they let the TV babysit us, right? For a lot of latchkey kids, depending on the 90s, 80s, when you were raised, all of that stuff literally helped us create these first chapters of our way of thinking, and then our behaviors and environmental experiences after just imprinted it deeper and deeper and deeper until we just thought this was norm. Oh, I thought everyone was like this, until you run across someone and you're like, you're weird. You're actually kind. What's wrong with you? You actually don't have an agenda. Or I'm not used to people being a friend like this. We're not used to some of those things because our early imprints came from other people's hurt. And you need to be, in my opinion, intentionally selfish enough to create that space so you have room to see where you need to heal. And once you're done all the healing work at that level, because it really doesn't end, right? Because there's new wounds and new storms that life is constantly bringing us and bringing up other stuff. Well, now you have room to play and to create the reality that you want. But you don't have that if you don't have space for it. So I've reclaimed my power from the word selfish personally, and hopefully the hundreds of thousands of other people who have been introduced to my ecosystem over the last few years, to see you don't have to do it just because the world says it's not normal to create that space for you. You're supposed to be taxed and burnt out until you're in the hospital with an IV drip in your arm, right? And then it's okay. Oh, girl, be selfish. Take care of you. Then we say it's okay because we're literally like nearing our deathbed. But how about we do it before we get there?
Yes, preventative care.
Yes.
Preventative before it's too late and we have to treat the symptoms as well as the cause.
Yes.
I love that. So, what steps would you recommend for someone to take to, first, I guess, give themselves the permission to be intentionally selfish and then create that space to be selfish?
Yeah, you are full of perfect questions today. So I give it away a little bit in the tagline of the book. So the title is Selfish, but the tagline of the book, or subtitle, whatever you want to call it, is Permission to Pause, Live, Love, and Laugh Your Way to Joy. when you want to give yourself that permission, the first thing you have to do is pause, back yourself up from your quote unquote productive schedule, right? Like put in a breather where you can literally put permission to pause blocks on your calendar. If you're an ambitious woman or a brave man that's listening to this that has a rigorous schedule, you already know. If you don't put it on your calendar, which for most of us is a second Bible, it ain't happening. It's not getting done. So you have to put you on your calendar and hold yourself accountable, even if that means setting an alarm 10 minutes before the calendar notification goes off, whatever you need for your little mental trickery to make sure that you don't push snooze on yourself and you give yourself an opportunity to take a space, like back up, hold on. All right, I need a moment. And that moment, next step is to live. What feels good for you to live before you can even get to the loving and the laughing part? Well, for me, I need movement. Fitness is a tonic for me, but reality is in a blazer and a silk shirt, you're not gonna get too much sweating going on in here with the kind of day I have. So I might just stand up and stretch and feel the tension in my shoulders release, just something small. If you can create more space or you don't mind sparkling, as I call sweating, when you're at work, if you can sparkle a little bit more, then go ahead and give yourself permission to do 5 minutes of jumping jacks or get on a rebound or just get your blood flowing, not to problem solve and to fix something that's in your day, but just to give yourself that moment to breathe. Because if you jump into even problem solving for yourself, you're not really giving yourself a chance to listen to what your body is telling you. Our trauma is held in our body. And although everyone doesn't have trauma in the quote unquote traditional sense, because they're thinking of the big T trauma, the bigger ones, sexual assault, physical assault, all those things, there are lots of little T traumas that are happening for people. Depending on how you perceived that moment with your mother when she called you selfish, that could have been traumatic. And trauma really is in the perception, not just in the action. So for anyone who's listening to this, don't compare your problems to anyone else. Don't think you don't deserve the space to pause and do what you need to move towards that joy, which is the living, the loving, the laughing. All of that matters. And of course, we can get into the weeds of having a power up routine for your morning and bookending it with a power down at night. But for most of us, you need that very, very first step, which is to be aware enough to pause so you have space to listen to what your body has been screaming at you through stomach aches and headaches, and your allergies are normally a 5, they're on 25 right now. Right? Like our bodies are constantly trying to get our attention, and we're not necessarily slowing down enough to hear and listen to it.
Oh my God, I can relate to that so much because my own to-do list is never ending. I
Mhm.
never pause, I never stop. And, just the thought of not working for a couple of hours or taking a day off for myself is, oh, the anxiety that comes from it. So, yes, something that I really need to do and really need to follow myself. And honestly, there's a concept in your book that also resonated with me very, very much, and
Mhm.
that's the notion of being nice versus the notion of being kind.
Mhm.
And I want to touch upon that. What is the difference to you? Because you talk about the difference in the book
Yeah.
between being nice and being kind, and how can we start being more kind to ourselves?
Oh my goodness. Powerful, powerful question, Masha. Ooh, you just gave me chills. Okay. So, for everyone listening, because I know most of us in the United States at least, grew up, especially as young females, being told, you're so nice, right? You got to be nice. Oh, up, be nice, baby. Like we hear it all the time. So, we thought that that was where you're supposed to do to make sure people can't point a finger and call you the opposite of that, which usually isn't mean, it's usually bully, right? And no one that I know wants to be ever identified as a bully, regardless of what behavior they're having. So I used to fall into that, as well. Like, oh, I'm a really nice person. I think most people that meet me will say I'm a nice person. And then I have to give a shout out to a really good client, colleague, and friend, Venus David. She's amazing. It was probably 2013 or 14, somewhere around there. And I was already in the midst of trying to get myself to finish writing this book because I'm like procrastinating and doing everything else, being overbooked and busy, overproductive, just so I don't have the space, quote unquote, to even write it, right? And we were having a just a regular tea conversation over the phone, and she said something like, "Yeah, I ran into this other person and they said Nikita's so nice." And I said, "This is Venus talking. No, she not. She is not nice. If you really know her, you know she is not nice. She kind. She's authentic. She's transparent. She's going to tell you the truth. You're never going to have to play any guessing games with her, but she is not nice, honey." So when she told me that, I immediately started laughing because she is also not nice. She's what I would consider kind. The difference as we were discussing it, and she was, not necessarily shaping it, but sharing her perspective, was so palpable for me. And I agreed wholeheartedly. I'm really not a nice person. And if you know me, you know that you're not going to get superficial answers from me. You're not going to get, someone who's going to pacify you to make you feel better. You're not going to get a smile when I don't feel like smiling. You're not going to get someone who's placating you just because that's what the stereotypical norms, and here we go with that word, right, are setting up for you to be expected to behave a certain way at certain tables when everyone else gets to say what they want. But because you are a female, let alone a Black female or other minority, you dare not say a certain thing, even though everyone else has, cachet to do it. You are not supposed to do it. And that has always been an issue for me. I'm like, wait a minute. Everyone else gets to speak up and be honest, respectfully, for me, always leading with love. But I can't say it because I'll be perceived as intimidating, aggressive, angry. You don't get it because you didn't go to the schools we went to. And I'm like, oh, this is not acceptable. So what I started doing, the nerd that I am, right, is researching more about the differences and how it can show up when we mask how we really feel with these nice behaviors. And I made a vow to myself way back when it was somewhere between, again, 2012 and 2014. I want to make sure. Now, it just happened to show up this way for this friend where she could see through me and see the truth when I was still calling myself nice back then. But I made a vow. I don't want to be a nice person. I always want to be the person you can count on being clear. You know my agenda. My agenda, Masha, with you right now is to have an excellent interview so that your listeners get the valuable tools that they deserve, so they are interested and entertained and they can stay the whole time, and they review, subscribe, and share this episode. That is my agenda with you. Very clear. I never come up to any place without an agenda. When we have tea together, my agenda with you will be, well, tell me more about what's going on. I want to know how I can support you, because that collaboration over competition any day. I'm always clear about my agenda. I don't want to pretend that I don't see color, or I don't see shape, or I don't have an agenda. I just want to meet. If you got that kind of time, baby, because I don't, I don't have that kind of time to show up anywhere without being clear about what it is that I want and or need to give in this environment as well as to receive. And the only way that I can do this, and it goes right back to being intentionally selfish, is because I've done the work. I'm clear on what I want in the world, why I want it. And I'm also very clear that as smart and as brilliant as I am, there is so much that I don't understand and so much that I don't know. So being in spaces with people like you that I can learn from and I can grow from, and get checked on some of my own stereotypical thoughts and behaviors that maybe I didn't even know I had. That allows me to grow and be a better version of myself. But I want to be clear that I'm not showing up to wiggle toes with anyone. I can do that at home with my husband, right? But I would say the nice part is that superficial. That's what you give to strangers that you don't really want to make eye contact with. Like, I just want to, nod my head, keep it going. That's nice behavior. Kind is everything we were just talking about. It's being in touch with yourself enough that you can be honest about who you are. If I'm not having a good day, no smile, right? It's not angry, it's not mean. I don't want to project or vomit any emotions on you that don't belong to you. But I don't want to pretend either, and I don't want to posture. If I'm not feeling great in my pencil skirt and my pearls, people who really know me are going to know, like, girl, you look good, but you obviously don't feel good. You're just going to know it because I don't have a poker face. And instead of explaining it and apologizing for it, I own it. And that's the difference.
I love that. Honestly, I feel like that is true in every culture in terms of, especially as women, we are just conditioned to be nice to everybody else and to portray something else. Just, when I was a little girl, Bambi was my favorite cartoon. And, there's the character, the bunny, Thumper, which is taught if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say nothing at all,
Hmm.
which is a very superficial, very a fake way of living your life because you
Yes.
are not necessarily helping people by telling them the truth by being your authentic self. And that's so incredibly powerful. I love that distinction. Thank you very much for sharing it with us. It's
No, thank you. And I'll give you something else for your personal toolkit because I forgot about Thumper the bunny and Bammy. So a cute little interesting point that most humans in this world don't know. My nickname in my family by my husband and my kids is Bunny. So now you can replace that old bunny with your new bunny in your life. It's literally the cup that I don't know if you can see. Love every
oh,
bunny.
so cute.
Thank you.
Oh my god, I have goosebumps because that is incredibly powerful. Next time I will think about something like nice to say, I'll think about you and I'll say something authentic. And I hope that anybody who's listening to this or watching this will also do the same thing because that is, one of those habit hacking mechanisms where you
Yes.
just like spin it and just change the narrative, change the script as you call it in your book.
Yes.
So I want to talk about because I feel like being kind to yourself and being kind to others can only happen when you understand your boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and you create space for self care, whatever self care may imply for people, right? Some people, see a bathtub with some nice salts as self care. Some people see going to the park and journaling self care.
Mm-hmm.
Different forms of self-care. How can people, find those patterns in themselves, figure out what is self-care for them and create that space for them to be intentional and to be kind to themselves?
Oh, another good one. I would say, first and foremost, if your self care and your self love, which are two separate but conjoining things, if it's not selfish, you're doing it wrong. You know, we've heard that before, and every meme you can think of on Instagram, TikTok, all the places. Self care isn't selfish. I'm like, yeah, it is if you're doing it right. And it should be. When you're intentionally selfish to take care of whatever you need to, so you have that space to get to the point of creating your joy at the end of that personal intimate gift to create your joy, definition. If you're doing that, then that means you've cut off the world, right? You've literally said, do not disturb, figuratively, maybe even literally on your phone and computer for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 hours. I take a 6 week self love cation every year. Everyone is cut off with the exception of the people that I need to be tethered to, like the people in my home. My husband and I happen to have an anniversary right in the middle of there. So we have our little 1.5, 2 weeks time, grandbabies, all that, some girlfriend time to fill up and love up on my girls, beach days, whatever. But 90% of that time is all me. It is literally do not knock on this door. Do not come to this Airbnb. I'm catching a train to wherever I want to go, or a plane, or taking a drive. And with the exception of making sure I'm being respectful and responsible so people know where I am in case someone wants to kidnap a young Black woman, I just want to make sure that they can find me. But outside of that, it is totally my time to recharge and refuel away from everyone else, not because they're bad people, not because I don't love them, not because I don't want to spend time with them, but in order for me to be the friend you want to come to your party, to be the person you want to call when you are leaning in for some encouragement, or maybe you need a new tool or you have a question. If you want me to be that person you look forward to talking to, then I need to back up and take my space. Or else I'm going to be giving from resentment because I'll be on empty. I'm working with power couples and high achieving married women entrepreneurs all day long, not including the leadership intimacy work we do in corporations and the speaking and a lot of spinning plates in my hand. And I get to spin them with a smile on my face because I'm not spinning them out of control where I feel like I'm over capacity. And I'm not saying a lot of yes. No is my favorite word, second to boundaries. Literally, like my kids might say reverse. They might be like, no, my mom's favorite word is no, straight up. But it's only because they're still learning, that the boundaries are there on purpose so that when you really do want me or maybe even need me, I am gleefully coming to help you and support you versus showing up shading you with my energy. And I know we have all had conversations with people we thought were friends or colleagues or in our circle some kind of way, and they seemed like we were bothering them by calling. They always said, "Let me know if you have a question. Reach me anytime." People who say that clearly did not mean it because when you reach out, if they're not full, if they weren't making that space for whatever their version of self care and self love is, you're getting projected vomit, sometimes projectile projected vomit on you that can end a relationship that could have been amazing, that could have been productive and collaborative and what I call powerful partnerships. But one or both of you weren't creating the space that you needed, having boundaries around your self care so you can really do the work. So I would say, and that was a long way of answering your question, but a lot of it is first making sure that whatever your current self care practices are not about other people. If you can only take time off to do, I don't know, I'll just say a mani pedi, if you can only do that with your friends or with your kids and you feel like, well, if I do it by myself, I feel guilty. I won't know what to do. I really need to make sure that this time is shared with someone else. That's not selfish. And you want to be kind and selfish for yourself so that your self care and self love practices are right. Now, does that mean that you can't be selfish with other people? No. The best lovers are selfish lovers. Don't get me started. That's a whole nother conversation. But you have to check why you're doing it. Am I doing it because someone else expects me to do it? If I don't do it, I'll feel guilty or shame. If any of those three things are coming up, you got to literally pause and back up and say, wait a minute, what do I want? Okay, maybe I want a nap, which means no one's included. Guess what? When you take that 20 minutes to lay your head down and no one can bother you, technically, that is selfish behavior because no one is supposed to disturb you. But we don't see it like that because it's like, oh, it's just, a time, it's a moment. What about when you're in the hospital? Lord forbid. So I'm not putting that on anyone, but you go in the hospital for scheduled, mandatory, voluntary surgery, whatever it is, and you're there for a few days. Your laptop's not with you, you're not able to have all the team meetings. The world seems to get along just fine when you couldn't be there for a quote unquote justified reason. So, how about you justify with yourself and look at your current practices to see, am I doing whatever those things were, the tub time, the mani pedi, the massages, the bubbles and brunch with my friends? Am I doing it because it is expected of me, or I will feel guilty or shame for not doing it? Or am I doing it because I truly, really want to and it actually fuels me? It relaxes me, it heals me. If you can't say yes to that, you got to recalibrate.
Wow, so powerful. And I love how it all comes back to the word selfish and how you reframe the word selfish for yourself because it is a powerful word and it's a concept that we all need to come around on, I think, or at least those of us who see it
Hmm.
still from a different perspective.
Yeah.
All of the routines and all of the boundaries, everything takes time, obviously, and takes so much intentionality. And I know that you're incredibly intentional with how you spend your time, and from taking all of that time away to be with yourself and with your loved ones on a vacation to daily things, right? And how you spend your time and energy, which from what I have learned about you at this point and from our other conversations, I know that you align it to your natural rhythms and your energy levels throughout your day and all of those things that enable you to focus, be more intentional and be more focused on how you work, when you work, etc.
Yeah.
I love that. And I'm right now a student of that practice myself. So I would love to hear your advice on how one can recognize those patterns and align themselves with those natural rhythms to be also much more intentional with how and when they work and how and when they rest and how they just optimize their time.
Absolutely. I would say first look at what you were doing versus what you want to do, right? Like, so what I'm a natural early bird or early riser, as some people would call it. My circadian rhythm is naturally somewhere between 3:15 and 4:15 in the morning, where my mind starts to open up. My body's still tired and I'm still very much in a lull, but I can like hear, birds or cars driving by. Like I start to be slowly aware, like moving from my REM into a light sleep around that time. And then I could, depending on what my alarm is set for, whatever, I could get up and go and have all the energy in the world in the morning. And then I had certain peaks and drops throughout the day, and it would come back up right around 4 and then lull off like around 7:38. That was prior to 2020. Right, like prior to the pandemic. The pandemic definitely shifted, which what has always been my rhythm for almost 40 plus years at this point, without giving my full age away. But it had always been my rhythm. And then because the schedule shifted, I wasn't traveling as much. There wasn't any plane, trains, or automobiles happening when we were on shutdown and a lockdown. I slowly started to pick back up. And change again in 2021. I literally just came back to work after being away since July. I came back mid January of 2022 because I had to deal with all this health stuff with tumors and reconstructive surgery and all kinds of different things that really shifted my body. So I had to be honest with myself that what used to work for me no longer does, right? Not just for medical reasons, but there was also this shift, this paradigm shift that our world went in, and it changed our schedule. I have clients all over the world, and sometimes I needed to be on Zoom at 5 a.m. Sometimes I need to be on Zoom at 10 p.m. at night. That played havoc on my system for any kind of rhythm until I was able to take my time back. So I would say is honoring where you really are. Like, when you wake up in the morning, even with an alarm, it would be great if you could do a beta test to see when you would wake up, if you went to bed at a quote unquote healthy time for you and you had an average time of rest for you. When do you wake up without the alarm? Like, what does that look like? But I know that's not always possible with these really rigorous productive schedules we have. So just pay attention to where you feel like if I were to go deeper on a metaphysical level, where your vibration feels higher, you feel more open and more welcoming. If you're not normally a hugger, if you're not normally a early smiling person, like, when does your energy shift from whatever your neutral baseline is, where you feel like you can handle whatever comes your way, versus this dip of, please do not bother me, do not send me an email, I'm going to be pissed as soon as I see a Slack message, like, when does that shift happen? And really, do an experiment with yourself. Pay attention to what feels good. You need more than a day. Honestly, if you could do like the same day over about a month period, like every Wednesday for 4 weeks, just kind of see what that feels like. The middle of the week is always a good test because the beginning of the week is different. Most of us are set up depending on whether or not you love your work and you know what you're doing. But most of us, our Monday energy is always very different if you actually enjoy the work you do, than our Wednesday energy, even when you do love the work you do, right? Your Wednesday is usually for most people kind of like, oh, okay, I'm almost there and there's a lot happening. I only got 2 more days to get things done, right? Like, our energy has already shifted physically and mentally. So it's a good day to run that beta test on yourself. I am again a nerd, so I jot things down. Like, what time did I wake up Wednesday morning? When did I start to get hangry? Was it around 11 because I didn't have my protein shake, da 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 da, whatever. Did you exercise? Did you not? Like, looking at what's your normal that you may have broken free from that might also be impacting your energy that day, versus, no, this was a normal day. And guess what? My energy, my creativity, my focus peaked at 10 o'clock. And around, let's just say 4:30, I noticed that I was already having some adult ADD moments, looking around, waiting for an out, do I need to go to the bathroom? Maybe I should go refill my cup, right? Like, my head starts pulling away from what I'm doing and really paying attention to that. It makes the world of difference. And for many of us, that comes in about two peaks. It could be a 7 to 12, you're high, and then you kind of go down for a couple of hours. And then there's like a little bit of a reboot that happens after you got some nourishment or maybe a walk or maybe just emptied your bladder, whatever worked for you to like get things moving. And that second peak is usually halftime. It's only about 2 hours before you start going into a natural wind down. And again, that is assuming you're not having a really atypical day where you have an event happening and you have to be on all day. All of us can do any of the things when you have to, but we're talking about the rules, not the exceptions for that.
Yeah, the routines, the habits.
Hmm.
I love your intentionality about all of this, and honestly, that's just, yeah, something that I'm working on myself. I and as you said, it's so interesting noticing those patterns and seeing how different days feel.
Thank
So, I wanted to ask you as a final question, what is the biggest piece of advice that you'd like women who are listening to this interview to take away? What is the biggest call to action that you'd like for them to receive at the end of this conversation?
you. Oh, Masha, that's a great one. If there was any one thing that I could say to just kind of put a bow on all of it, you actually led with this word, which is a huge part of what I believe and what I stand for, is to create boundaries for yourself that are expansive. And what I mean by that is a lot of us feel like boundaries are limiting and they're going to block us in and lock other people out. And that also makes us not be the selfless version of ourselves that we want to be. And just kind of reframing that, putting a different spin on it. When you create the boundaries in the different areas of your life that you need around your personal habits, around your energy management, who's getting in and siphoning from you, who do you have constantly reaching out, email, text, phone? Are you talking to that cousin for 2 hours about the same boyfriend she had for 10 years that isn't changing? Like, are you know what I mean? Like, how are you using your time? When you start to reframe it as I'm not closing anyone out, in order for me to show up as kind as I know I am on the inside, regardless of what past behaviors or traumas or issues have been in my life, I'm really a kind person in my core, if you believe that you really are. And maybe because you've been burnt out, overwhelmed, over capacity on so many levels, maybe you haven't been the kindest version of yourself with you as well as other people who are closest to you, because those are the ones that usually feel the heat, right? People you live with and that you see the most, they get all the frayed edges of you. The world gets the glamorized lipstick on, mascara popping, version. And they should be the ones that get, to get the juicy parts of you, but we don't necessarily do that because we're lacking boundaries. So reframe it. Before I leave this world, I don't want anyone to say, well, here's all the great work Naketa did. If you knew me, I want you to say, she gave me this. She poured into me this way. Oh, I remember that 5 minutes that we had, because that's all we had, child. She didn't have a lot of time. But that 5 minutes changed my life. I want people to feel me more than they remember a thing that I said or I did. And I can't do that if I don't have boundaries around the parts of me that are super important for my healing, for my energy management, for me to have shifted perspective and maybe not be stuck in old stereotypes and break them, to your point of this show, so we can have those conversations that are awkward and uncomfortable. But I can't do that if I don't have expansive boundaries. So that's what I would encourage, is everyone just look at your boundaries as expansive. They allow you to exponentially have space to create the joy that you deserve because you are worthy.
Oh, goosebumps again. Naketa, thank you so much. This has been so beautiful. I feel like I could ask you so like a million questions, but of course, respecting your time, and who knows, maybe we could do another episode. But
I'm down.
I would love that because as I was writing down questions, I had so many questions, from the change agents to
Oh,
scripts, etc. So many things that I want to dive deeper into. But maybe next time. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your stories, and just sharing your light, sharing your energy with people who are listening today.
I
I really
appreciate.
appreciate you.
You took the words out of my mouth. Look at how we're marrying each other. This is good synergy. I really do appreciate you and this platform that you've created to have deeper, greater conversations. Thank you, Masha.
Nikita, thank you so much for this conversation. I've had goosebumps on so many occasions. It was just like this. my whole body was reacting to what you were saying, and it was just beautiful. So thank you so much for being here, for joining me here today, and for sharing your truth, for sharing your story, for sharing your wisdom. I will leave all the links for you to follow Naketa in the description below, so make sure you go ahead and do that. And you can also purchase her book using a link over there as well. Like I said, it's incredible, and I'm gonna get back to it after I finish recording right now. Like this video if you've enjoyed it, and let me know what you thought about it. What in particular resonated with you the most? What is your perception of the word selfish? And are you allowing yourself to be selfish? Are you creating that space for yourself and for a self care routine that is selfish? I love how Naketa put it. Share this episode with a friend who needs to hear this, and make sure that you're subscribed to this YouTube channel and to the podcast, the Meaningful Conversations podcast, on the podcasting platform of your choice. You can just search for those words and you will find our podcast, or on YouTube, Stereotype Breakers. And we also can be friends on other social media. You can find us as Stereotype Breakers. Have a wonderful time the day you're currently experiencing. Bye.